My beloved soul, there was a time when their silence said more than words ever could. You remember it, even if you pretend you don't. The unanswered messages, the delayed replies, the strange distance that settled between you when all you wanted was clarity. You stood in moments where your heart leaned toward them, and they looked the other way as if what you carried inside you was invisible, as if the connection you felt was something only you could sense. And perhaps the hardest part was not that they ignored you. It was that they made you question whether what you felt had ever been real at all. So you did what people do when their heart grows tired of waiting. You began teaching yourself how not to care. Not all at once, of course. It happened slowly. You stopped checking for signs. Stopped imagining their name appearing when your phone lit up. Stopped building little futures in your mind around someone who seemed so uncertain about your presence. And yet, even while you were letting go, something remained unfinished. Not because you were obsessed, not because you were weak, but because some connections do not disappear simply because they were neglected. They linger, quietly, deep beneath your logic, beneath your pride, beneath the version of you that learned to smile and say, "It no longer matters." But then something shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for you to notice. A glance that lasted a little too long. A conversation that felt strangely different. A softness in their energy that had not been there before. At first, it made no sense. Because how does someone who once treated your presence like it was ordinary suddenly begin looking at you as though they are afraid to lose you? How does someone who once kept distance begin moving closer without explaining why? And that is where this story begins to change. Because what looked like indifference back then was not always what it seemed. Sometimes people ignore what overwhelms them. Sometimes they distance themselves from what feels too real, too unexpected, too powerful to control. And sometimes the person who acted like they felt nothing was the one feeling far more than they knew how to handle. That truth does not erase what happened. It does not erase the nights you sat wondering why someone could feel so close in spirit and yet remain so far in action. It does not erase the confusion, but it begins to explain something your heart has sensed for longer than your mind wanted to admit. They were never unaffected by you. They were unprepared for you, because meeting you did something to them they never expected. It disrupted the version of life they thought they were comfortable living. Before you, they knew how to keep things simple, detached, predictable, controlled. But then you arrived. And somehow your presence unsettled all of that. You made them feel seen in places they had spent years hiding. You awakened emotions they had carefully buried beneath routine and distraction. You challenged walls they had built so long ago they forgot those walls were even there. And instead of leaning in, they pulled away. Not because you meant nothing, but because you meant too much. Still, time has a strange way of forcing honesty out of people, especially when they begin to realize what they almost lost. Because while they were busy pretending not to care, life kept moving. You kept growing. You kept becoming someone stronger, someone calmer, someone less willing to chase what refused to choose you. And distance gave them something they did not have before: perspective. The absence of your energy, the quiet where your attention used to be, the realization that your warmth was not something guaranteed. It changed them. Because people often do not understand the value of a soul until they can no longer reach it the same way. That is when regret begins. Subtle at first, a thought here, a memory there, a random moment where your name enters their mind without permission. Then more often, until one day they realize they have not stopped thinking about you, not truly. And by the time that truth settles in fully, Everything feels different, especially now, because the path ahead of you is not small. You are not standing before a minor adjustment, a temporary shift, a passing chapter. You are standing at the edge of movement, real movement, a life transition, a change of environment, a change of routine, a change in what your future looks like when you wake up each day. You are moving. And the part no one saw coming is who may be moving with you. Because the person who once ignored what was right in front of them is no longer looking at you the same way. They have begun to understand something that arrived too late for comfort but not too late for possibility. That losing you would cost them more than their pride is worth. So now they hesitate before speaking, they rethink every interaction, they replay old moments in their mind wondering how they could have been so blind when your presence was right there. And perhaps what unsettles them most is realizing that while they were busy being uncertain, someone else could have stepped into the place they left empty. Someone else could have recognized your worth. Someone else could have built the future with you they were too afraid to admit they wanted. That thought alone has changed the way they move. Because now there is urgency where there once was hesitation. Now there is intention where there once was confusion. Now there is a quiet determination forming inside them that did not exist before. And you feel it. Even if no one has said everything aloud yet, you feel it in the way the energy shifts when they are near. In the way conversations linger longer than they used to. In the way their eyes carry words they have not fully spoken. Something is building. Not rushed, not chaotic, but undeniable. Still, this is not simply about romance. It is deeper than that. Because this movement in your life is not only about going somewhere new with someone unexpected. It is about emotional reversal. It is about the strange, almost poetic way life sometimes returns people to the very heart they once overlooked. Only after they have learned what that heart was truly worth. And maybe that is what makes this moment so powerful. Not that someone who ignored you now sees you, but that they see you after you stop needing them to. That matters. Because now if they step closer, it will not be because you begged. It will not be because you waited endlessly. It will not be because you remained frozen hoping they would change. It will happen because you kept living. Because you kept becoming. Because while they were learning your value through your absence, you were learning your value through your growth. And that changes everything. Because the version of you standing here now is not the same person who once would have accepted crumbs and called it hope. You have changed too much for that. So if they walk into this next chapter beside you, they will not walk beside the version of you who tolerated confusion. They will walk beside someone who understands their own worth now. Someone who no longer mistakes inconsistency for mystery. Someone who no longer confuses emotional distance for depth. Someone who has learned that love, real love, does not thrive in constant uncertainty. Which means if they are coming with you, they must come differently, more honestly, more intentionally, more openly than before. And perhaps they know that. Perhaps that is why they have been so careful lately, so thoughtful, so unlike the person you first met. Because growth has touched them too. Pain has taught them too. Regret has matured them in ways comfort never could. And now they stand in the strange ache of realizing the person they once failed to value may still be within reach. But only if they rise into the version of themselves worthy of walking beside you. That is why this shift feels heavier than simple attraction. This is not flirtation. This is not surface level longing. This is the emotional aftermath of someone finally understanding what your presence means. Just as life begins moving you into a new chapter. And the most remarkable part? Neither of you expected the story to unfold this way. You thought distance meant ending. They thought avoidance meant escape. Yet somehow, what was ignored did not disappear. What was denied did not die. What was unfinished simply waited. Until both hearts were ready enough to understand what was really happening. So now here you are, standing on the threshold of movement, of change, of a chapter neither of you could have imagined when all this first began. And somewhere within that unfolding future, a truth is still rising to the surface. The person who once looked away may soon be the very one refusing to let go. But before that happens, before the next step is taken, before everything fully reveals itself, there is something they still have to face within themselves first. And when they do, nothing between you will remain the same. Absolutely. Here is part 2 of your continuous story, written to flow seamlessly from part 1, with deeper emotional escalation, stronger retention pacing, and long-form immersive storytelling energy. My beloved soul, what they are wrestling with now is not simply emotion. It is the weight of realizing that timing can be both merciful and cruel. Merciful, because life has given them another chance to understand what you truly are. Cruel, because that understanding arrived only after they allowed distance to grow between you. And there is no pain quite like recognizing the value of something after your own hesitation nearly cost you the entire future attached to it. That realization has not left them. It follows them into quiet moments. It interrupts ordinary days. It reaches them in places where distraction used to work. Because once someone truly sees what they almost lost, peace becomes difficult to fake. They replay old conversations now. Not casually, not with nostalgia, but with a kind of ache. They remember things they once overlooked. The way you showed up even when your own heart was tired. The patience you carried when confusion would have made others walk away. The softness in your care, the steadiness in your loyalty, the quiet depth of the love you offered without demanding immediate return. They see it all now. And perhaps what hurts them most is understanding how rare that kind of love actually was. Because people often think meaningful connections will wait forever. They assume what is genuine will remain available until they are ready. But life does not work that way. People change, hearts evolve, doors close, and now they know. If they remain passive any longer, they may watch you walk fully into a future that no longer includes them. That thought has become impossible for them to ignore. It unsettles them in ways they never expected. Because once, they believed there would always be time. Time to figure themselves out. Time to decide what they wanted. Time to come closer when they felt more prepared. But suddenly, time no longer feels endless. Now it feels urgent. Because something in your energy has shifted. You may not realize how visible your transformation has become. But they do. They notice how your peace has deepened. How your attention is no longer centered around whether they stay or go. How your presence carries the quiet confidence of someone who has survived disappointment and become wiser through it. That version of you changes everything. Because before, they may have believed you would always wait. Now, they are no longer sure. And uncertainty is teaching them the lesson comfort never could. It is forcing honesty out of them. Slowly, uncomfortably, but undeniably. At first, they tried to suppress it. Tried to convince themselves the growing pull they felt toward you was temporary. A passing wave. A delayed reaction. A moment of loneliness mistaken for love. But the feeling refused to fade. Instead, it grew stronger. With every memory, every glimpse of you, every reminder that your life is moving forward whether they act or not. The truth inside them became impossible to deny. They do not merely miss your presence. They want your future. And that realization has changed the way they look at everything. Because wanting someone's attention is one thing. Wanting to build a life beside them is something entirely different. That is why the idea of moving with you carries such emotional weight. It is not just about place. It is not just about proximity. It is about choosing alignment. Choosing to walk into unfamiliar territory not separately, but side by side. And for someone who once ran from emotional depth, that kind of desire is not casual. It is transformative. Still, transformation rarely happens without conflict, because before they can move toward you fully, they must confront the version of themselves that once pushed you away. And this part matters more than you know, because real love cannot be built on unhealed patterns. It cannot survive if one person has changed while the other remains emotionally trapped in the same fear that created the distance to begin with. So life is doing something difficult with them right now. It is forcing them inward, forcing them to look honestly at why they ignored what they felt, why vulnerability frightened them, why receiving genuine love made them retreat instead of open. And those answers are not simple. Some wounds began long before you ever entered their life. Some fears were shaped by heartbreak they never fully healed from, by betrayals they never processed, by environments that taught them affection could not be trusted. So when something real arrived in the form of you, their instinct was not to embrace it. Their instinct was to protect themselves from it, even if that protection cost them the very thing they secretly wanted most. But healing changes people. Awareness changes people. Regret changes people. And the person you knew before is not the exact person standing in this moment now, because suffering has a way of refining what comfort leaves untouched. The loneliness they felt after distancing from you, the emptiness of pretending not to care, the haunting realization that other connections never felt the same. It all became part of their awakening. You were not easily replaced. No matter how hard they tried to move on, to distract themselves, to convince themselves someone else would create what you created, nothing matched it. Because not every connection is ordinary. Some people enter your life and alter your emotional blueprint forever. You became that for them. And once someone realizes that, everything changes. Now when they imagine the future, it is not abstract anymore. It has your face in it. It has your laughter in it, your voice, your energy, your presence beside them in places they once pictured only themselves. That is why this movement approaching your life feels so charged. It is not random. It is not small. It is the beginning of a chapter where truth can no longer remain hidden beneath pride. Because soon they will have to show you what has changed. Not with vague hints. Not with half-hearted effort. Not with inconsistent gestures that leave you confused. No. If they truly want to walk beside you where you are going, they will have to meet you with clarity, and that may be the part they fear most. Because it is one thing to feel love privately, it is another thing entirely to speak it aloud to someone you once neglected, to stand before the person you hurt through your silence, and admit, I was wrong. I felt more than I let you see. I did not understand what you meant to me until I risked losing you. That kind of honesty requires courage, especially from someone who once hid behind emotional distance. But courage is growing inside them now. You may not see it fully yet, but every day, the battle inside them shifts. Fear is losing ground. Pride is weakening. Clarity is becoming stronger than avoidance. And somewhere in that inner war, a decision is forming. Because they know something now they did not know before. If they let fear control them again, they will lose you for real this time. Not emotionally, not temporarily, completely. And they are beginning to understand they may not survive that regret easily. So while you continue preparing for change, while your life opens into new territory, while the path ahead stretches wider than before, know this: they are moving too. Not just physically, internally, emotionally, spiritually, toward truth, toward maturity, toward the version of themselves capable of loving you the way they should have from the beginning. And when that version fully arrives, the energy between you will shift in ways neither of you can ignore. Because there is a difference between someone liking you and someone finally becoming ready for you. That readiness is what is being born now. Not perfectly, not instantly, but genuinely. And perhaps that is why everything feels suspended lately. Why nothing has fully happened yet, but everything feels like it is building towards something. Because you are standing in the space before revelation, the quiet before confession, the pause before movement, the tension before the truth becomes impossible to keep hidden. They are closer than you think. Closer to speaking, closer to acting, closer to stepping into the role they once ran from. But there is still one thing they have not told you. One truth buried even deeper than their feelings. A reason they withdrew that had less to do with you, and more to do with something in their life they feared would make them unworthy of your love. And when that truth surfaces, you will understand the silence in a way you never did before. But whether it brings healing, or changes everything again, depends on what happens next.